Ooh,
More money.
look at more. Just a good writer. Just can't,
30
do
bucks.
not look at the light. Carefully. One of the things that we always talk about when we coach, when it comes to sizing, is normally people use story points.
Mm-hmm.
So the topic for today is story point sucks.
They suck so hard.
They are evil. They are really, really evil.
So here's my beef with story points, and I could go on, and this was a topic I get really passionate about, probably because I've gotten beat over the head about story points so much in my career. The intent behind story points, fantastic.
Okay.
If we're going to use the old cliche that the road to hell is paved with good intentions, perfect when it comes to story.
Perfect ones.
Perfect when it comes to story points. Not because of its intent or what it's used for. I hate story points because it opens the door for a lot of, I'm going to say it, data heads, leaders, leadership, management to take them and manipulate them to be something they're not
But
supposed to be.
not only them though, but we have a lot of misuse.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
In when it's very common when we use certain numbers and you try to figure out how to do estimation, how to do sizing, and that's when things fall apart.
Yep.
Yes. The intention, the reason why story point exists. Let's look at why we use story points.
Yeah.
How do we use story points?
So basic, going down to Mike Cohn's definition of it, you use story points for prioritization,
Right.
used by the product owner
Okay.
prior to bringing it into sprint, use it to prioritize, and then you use it for forecasting.
Okay.
Those are the two things that they say if you're going to prescribe, that's what it's used for.
So is there a meaning between the different numbers? Is a 5 times bigger than 1? I mean, can you make those assumptions that 2 is twice the effort of 1?
If you're looking at it from the definition of what a story point is, where it's effort and risk, it kind of helps, but that's where I think things start to fall apart, is that I'm not sure if the intent was really supposed to be orders of magnitude. I think it's more of, I think the intent was, does it fit?
So it's relative sizing, right?
Yeah.
All we know is 2 is bigger than 1,
Yep.
but it's smaller than the 3.
Correct.
That's all it is. It doesn't say that 2 is, twice is it or something like that. It doesn't really mean that. All it says 2 is bigger than 1 and smaller than 3.
But an engineer or anybody who's
Right.
estimating sees immediately, oh, it's orders of magnitude. It's double. It's triple. It's
Right.
5 times.
Right.
They don't look at it as simple as it is bigger than, or it's bigger than this but less than the other one.
Right. Right.
So they look at the numbers. The number implies, and I say implies, an absolute value
Right.
to it. And I think that's where all the confusion from the engineer perspective and from the metrics perspective comes into play, is that it implies an absolute number when it's not supposed to.
So I think when you coach and when I coach and when we get to story points, I think upfront in our early careers, we all use story points and we don't really know why, and people start counting velocity and things like that. And now I'm to a point where I don't tell the squad what the velocity is. I truly do not share information anymore. I go in with, hey, do you guys feel full? Do you feel the amount of work that you've committed to for the spring, is it enough?
Yeah.
And that's all I ask. I don't say, okay, well, previously you do 20 points, you should do another 20. I don't even bring that up anymore. It's like, take as much as you can and feel that it's good enough, right? And I don't use the story points anymore. Now, for me, story points is, like you said at the beginning, is that it's more to help us size the story from one or the other one, and also if there's any complexity.
Right.
So over time, if a story is, we don't usually do stories about 5 or 8, and we know 13 is too big.
Yep.
So that's kind of how I've been using it, and yes, we've used the data to help us do forecasting.
Yes.
Historical data, looking back. But not to use it as a means of a metrics to gauge or to say, well, how well is a team doing?
Right. For me, velocity doesn't indicate anything
Right.
as far as how a team is
Right.
doing. If we go to that, I keep referencing the book because I'm reading it. If we go back to Lisa Atkins' definition of what coaches,
Right.
scrum masters are doing, is we're trying to get our team to high performance. Nowhere in there does it say high performance equals a large velocity, whatever that might mean, or a higher velocity.
But isn't that one of the things that when you look at the description of a Scrum Master, right? We say, hey, the Scrum Master, your job or your goal is to create a high performance team.
Right.
And that translates into, well, we need to increase the velocity, right? They start with 0 or 10. They want the velocity to go up over time.
Right.
I'm starting to think that that's not a good statement, and that's not good something that we even tell a brand new Scrum Master, hey, your job is to increase velocity. That shouldn't be it.
No, at that point you're feeding the talk we had a couple weeks ago of now you're going after what is the definition
Right.
of efficiency.
Right.
So no, I mean a Scrum Master shouldn't be concerned about the velocity because the reality is that you could have a team that's cranking out, let's say 50 points. But nobody works together. They don't collaborate.
Right.
They are siloed. They only work on the certain things. They can't necessarily work outside of their area of expertise.
Mhm.
You might have a team that's doing 25 points, but they're collaborating. They understand the entirety of the system. They work together. They're not siloed. That's with those factors in mind, that could be considered a high performing team because they can be mixed and matched in a variety of ways. They're not, just because they produce more points doesn't mean anything. Also, the 20-point team could have 10 stories of 2 points.
That's correct.
And the 50-point team might have a 20, a 13, and an 8 or something like that.
So let's look in terms of, is it fair then for somebody to assess and say, well, cool, we understand we can't compare between the two different teams.
Mm-hmm.
Just looking at data, looking at what we got in terms of velocity for the team, is it fair for someone to ask, to say, what can we do to increase velocity? Is that a fair question?
I struggle with that one for a variety of reasons, and you could speak from your experience also. I mean, there's so many ways to game the system that I almost think that there's more options, or the odds are more in favor of gaming the system than actually getting the result. Actually, here's the question that we probably should ask back to folks who say that. If you say, we want to get more velocity, I think the appropriate answer is to push back and say, well, what exactly do you mean by that?
Right. So then let me add on to that. It says, maybe the way to ask the question is like, how can we increase velocity while not abandoning what our true values are and the way we work? In other words, we don't want people to game the story points. We don't want you to change how you do sizing. We want to use it as historical data to see trending. Can I get an improvement from the team? Because it's an indicator of, is it an indicator of improvement? Is it an indicator of that the team is moving in a certain direction? Could we say that? Could we then say, okay, is it fair to say, how can we get more velocity without doing any of those stuff, without trying to fake it, without trying to game it? Is that fair then?
I think that velocity is a symptom of some of the other things that you should look for in a team.
Right.
If your objective is, I want to improve the team, focus on things like collaboration, cross-functionality, look at the deliverables, what are they delivering in a sprint, and it could be total amount of work.
So in terms of that, wouldn't that be fair then, say, if we were to look at the impediments of getting high velocity, right? Ignoring that we don't fake it, don't change it, don't play it. That if we were to improve and say reduce the cost of meetings, reducing meetings, increasing the time of coding, reducing the switch. The constant switching.
Yeah. I get
context switching.
Yeah.
Right. So if we do all that stuff, will velocity naturally go up? Is there a guarantee? I guess.
No guarantee.
No
I
guarantee,
honestly, I
right.
don't think there is a guarantee. But I do like your suggestion of, and David Frank's talk about Elephant and the Rider.
Right.
He talks about flow. And flow is a real big thing with an engineer,
Right.
actually with anybody doing work.
Right,
I mean,
so-
if you're constantly, if you do have time to focus, more focus time means more time on the problem.
So, do we, as coaches, as Scrum Masters, does our mind automatically jump to a conclusion that when somebody says, how do we increase velocity, we jump to the negative aspect of things too fast? And
Oh, yeah,
I'm
yeah,
asking
yeah,
because
yeah.
I think I've done similar, I've been in a similar situation where when somebody says, well, how do we increase velocity? And my normal reactions, my blood rises and I get defensive. And now thinking back is that, maybe I need to, whoa, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
I think that the question arises from a misunderstanding of what we use and what velocity
Right.
is. And again, for me, it's the old world of efficiency and manufacturing bleeding into software.
Right.
And I can't fault MBA. Business schools teach it. It's out there still. There's going to be a mindset change that has to happen over the course of the years. But I agree, as coaches, me myself, I'm totally guilty of it. Somebody comes up to me and says they want to increase velocity or there's not enough points coming out of a team, I immediately want to stab my own eyes.
Right. So I think it's one of those things. I think it's important for us to get the focus. Is that what are we producing? What is the result of our work? Is the result story points or is the result feature? Is the result software, right? And I think if we go down that route, it says, okay, you want to improve performance, not that we're trying to improve the velocity. We're trying to say, well, how much more can we deliver in terms of feature?
That's the metric to go off of, is instead of focusing on points, instead of focusing on whatever metric you're using,
Right.
the right metric to measure is what is the end game? First,
What is the end game? I
what
like
is
that.
the
that.
end
Yep.
game?
Yep.
Is our end game delivering a feature? Is it delivering it the whole product and whatnot? And measure that. That will tell you if your team is performing effectively, not efficient, but effectively.
Okay.
If you look at your roadmaps, if you look at your game plans and your forecasts, and we deliver, doesn't matter if we're delivering 120 points. If we're not delivering the features, if we're not delivering what's going to give the business value in return,
Right.
who cares?
Right.
You're measuring and you're going after the wrong thing.
Okay. All right. Should we use story points? We've talked about how story points leads to the bad use of things and misinterpretation of things. Should we even use story points?
I am so torn with that question, Richard, and I've launched. We've launched a team where we did relative sizing,
Yes.
and by relative sizing, it was looking at work and then not even talking points, but putting
Yep.
it side by side and then creating this like
Yep.
tower of stuff. And that team has no problems with estimation whatsoever. No
Right.
problems with the points aren't even are just an afterthought. I've seen another team where the product owner did the exact same strategy and has got them thinking about it in terms of actually doesn't even have points. They have shapes. So each row that would normally correspond to a number is a shape, and they talk in terms of, does this sound more like a circle? Does this? It sounds silly, but it takes the whole concept of the absolute number and the orders of magnitude off the table and talk about the
Interesting.
work.
So when they do shapes, how do you know one's bigger than the other one?
So what they did was, it's actually really interesting. So they'll take their stories and they'll say, okay, this is the first one, bigger, larger, and they'll start stacking them in rows.
Okay.
And then what they did was, at the very beginning of when they started building their backlog, is that they did all their rows and then they just drew the shapes. And then they said, from here on out, these are
This is
circles,
what it means.
these are
Okay.
squares. So when they talk about a story that isn't
Right.
shaped, they'll talk about it,
So-
expand on it, and then compare it.
So that in itself is a benefit of having a physical space or some way to notate that, where I can put stickies on there. And that's what I love about physical boards and things like that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, real-time board does have similar things, but somebody needs to facilitate that. But it's easy. And I'm kind of like you, where when we go to sizing, I don't start with points. I just go up and pick one story, put it in there, and then pick the next one. Is it bigger, smaller?
Yep.
And just start laying that in by columns, by just laying them out. And then at the end of it, and start drawing lines and say, okay, and then start going from smallest to big. Fibonacci series 1, 2, 3, 5, and it's going down. It says done. We are done with sizing.
Yep.
Can that be sustainable? And that's the thing, is that up front when we have 0, that's easy.
Yeah.
But once you have in the middle of it, does it facilitate conversation or not? I'm not sure. So,
if I were to give advice to coaches starting off brand new teams,
right,
I would say, all of the original founders, and unfortunately Mike Cohn, who I'm a big fan of, is probably going to say something like, you guys are crazy. I would say do not introduce story points up front.
Right.
I would do the relative sizing for a few sprints. If you feel the team is mature enough to not get caught up in the weeds of points and numbers and all that, then maybe introduce it at some point. But if you don't have to, if they're actually, if it's working well, put the points on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Just do that.
Oh, I like that. Put the points behind the scene.
Yeah.
Maybe we don't even let them see the points.
Nope. I've done that with a team that was struggling because they were arguing about the points and orders of magnitude. We took the numbers completely off the table, but we did use them behind it because we wanted to use them for prioritization and for forecasting.
Right.
But as far as the team was concerned, those numbers no longer existed. And they were getting what used to be a refinement that was painful, got a lot better, and they were focused on the right things.
So the other alternatives that people have done is using t-shirt sizing, right? That's the small, medium, large.
Yeah.
My issue with that, there's not enough size in there.
No.
So that's my issue with those, is that there's not enough. So now you've got extra small, maybe there's a small, medium, large, extra large. I think that's what, 3, 4, 5. I think it should be enough, right?
It is, but the other warning with that is that people already have a preset of what a small, medium, large, and extra large should be. Granted, it's not numbered, but there's that danger out there. I've used t-shirt. I like t-shirt sizes too.
Right. So the only thing that I've seen what happens is that up front it works great, and then people start thinking, well, how many small is a large? How many small is a medium? Then you start doing this calculation in your head that 2 smalls is a medium, which doesn't really mean that way. And because once you add the numbers up, it doesn't mean that way at all.
That's why I even think Mike Cohn may have said it at some point. You use some sort of like arbitrary unit, and I think the product owner who's using shapes here, it's great because you can't do that. You can't say, well, how many circles fit in a square? Nah, it's not going to happen. Good luck with that one.
Well, how big is your circle?
Exactly.
What's the radius? And
at that point, you just say, get out of the room.
So I think that's one of the things that we've seen over and over again is the struggle with story points. And I myself struggle with it. I've seen teams struggle with it. It's a love-hate relationship with story points.
God, that's a perfect way to put it. It is such a perfect way. Love-hate. I love it. But I hate it.
I love it, but I hate it. Right? It's great when we need to do forecasting. Allows us to get better at forecasting. Not that you get accurate, you just get better at it. That's one way of looking at story points. Do I want it in front of my teams all the time? I will probably say no. For me, based on my experience coming to it, I really at a point where I don't even want to bring it up to the team.
Yep.
And if the team's asking, well, what's my velocity? I'm like, well, maybe you shouldn't be looking at that. Maybe you should. Well, how many items? Just count the work items they brought in. Now, what I've seen is that sometimes it's kind of interesting to watch because some teams will continuously do 5 things, regardless of the size of the story. 5 stories.
Yep.
Or 3 stories and $2. It still comes to 5.
Yeah.
Right. So that's interesting to watch how that works. So I think that's where I stand with it. Your thoughts?
I'm with you. As far as coaching goes, I introduce it. I'm starting to take it out of my introduction. I introduce it to the advanced teams or more mature teams because they get beyond it. They have a use.
Right.
There's a good purpose behind it. but we as coaches have to defend that purpose and make sure that it doesn't get used in the wrong way.
Right. All right. So that's our topic for today. We would love to hear from you. Let us know what your thoughts are. I mean, do you like it? Do you not like it? Do you hate it like us? Love, hate, maybe?
Tell us your horror stories too. I know there's a dozen of them out there, hundreds.
So this is it for this time. This is Masturbation Call.
B-Rod.
Bye.
Till next time.